let's start with an elementary style long division problem. I'm going to make this problem up. So let's see, what's a good number? 2,374? Sure. Divided by 3. When you're doing long division, you're looking at 3 times something to give you the number that's underneath the division symbol. So how many times does 3 go into 2? None, so you have to keep going. How many times does 3 go into 23? 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 7 times. And then you multiply 7 times 3 to get 21. And you write that 21 underneath. Does anyone remember what you do with the 23 and the 21? Subtract them. 23 minus 21 is 2. Drop down the 7. No, don't go to the next page. How many times does 3 go into 27? 9 times. 9 times 3 is 27. Subtract. Woohoo, there's a 0. Drop down your 4. How many times does 3 go into 4? Once. 1 times 3 is 3. We end up with 1. This is called a remainder. And your final answer would be 791 and 1/3. I think in elementary school you write like remainder 1, but it's 1 remainder out of 3, so that is 1/3. Now all we're going to do is put a couple letters in here and do the same thing with polynomials. So here's our first example. For starters, write out 6x to the third minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4, but leave some space between where the example is written and where you write it. So 6x to the third minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. We are dividing that by x minus 2. The minus 2 here on the outside, honestly, you can ignore that most of the time. You're really focusing on the x. X times what is going to give you the stuff in here. So the first step, and I'll try to use as many colors as I can to make this as easy to follow. X times what would give you 6x to the third? So obviously to get to 6x to the third, we need to multiply by a 6. And then x times how many x's would give us x to the third? 2. So x times 6x squared. And then try that. X times 6x squared is 6x to the third. Once we wrote a number on the top in this previous example, what did we then do with that number? We multiplied it to get the number to write underneath. That's what we need to do here as well. We need to take 6x squared and multiply that to both x and negative 2. So let's start with 6x squared times x. 6x squared times x is 6x to the third. 6x squared times negative 2 is negative 12x squared. What do you suppose we need to do next? Subtract. Honestly, this is the hardest part because it's hard to do this using mental math. You want to use mental math, but it's kind of difficult. 6x to the third minus 6x to the third, those should cancel each other out. That should be a 0. Negative 19x squared minus negative 12x squared. So negative 19 minus a negative 12. You can punch that into your calculator. Negative 19 minus a negative 12. You should get negative 7x squared. And remember, when you're adding or subtracting, in this case subtracting, you don't change those exponents, you're just like combining like terms. Our next step in long division was always to drop the next term down. And then we're going to start the whole cycle over. So now I'll use a different color to show you that this is a new cycle. Now we're going to try to figure out what goes here. And we need to focus on this negative 7x squared. So x times what would give us negative 7x squared? X times, we obviously need the negative 7 in there. And how do I get from x to x squared? We need another x. What do I do now? Multiply negative 7x to both of these. Negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Then negative 7x times negative 2 gives me positive 14x. I need to subtract. Negative 7x squared minus a negative 7x squared. Those cancel each other out. That zeroes out the column. 16x minus 14x is positive 2x. Bring the negative 4 down. And now we are ready for another cycle. We need to figure out what goes here, and we're focusing on the 2x. So x times what would give us 2x? 2. Positive 2. And now multiply. 2 times x and 2 times negative 2. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Subtract. 2x minus 2x is 0. Negative 4 minus a negative 4 is 0. There's no remainder on this one. And our final answer is 6x squared minus 7x plus 2. Now, what does this mean? This means if I did x minus 2, that's what we divided by originally, and multiplied that times 6x squared minus 7x plus 2, it would equal 6x to the third minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. So that shows you how all of those things are now connected. Couple things I want you to notice. Look up at the original purple that I wrote under the division bar. It started with x to the third, and then x squared, and then x, and then a number. If there's ever a missing piece, say we didn't have this negative 19x squared term, you would want to put a 0 there to fill in that place. So if you ever have missing terms, fill in zeros to take up those spaces. Like in this next one, do you see how we start with x to the third? And then the next term is negative 1. So we want to write down x to the third, 0x squared, 0x minus 1. Do you want to try this one by yourself? Yeah? If you want to try this by yourself, pause the video, give it a try, then play the video and I'll walk through it. First, I'm going to focus on this first blank. and I'm looking for this blank times x needs to give me x to the third. So I've already got x. To get to x to the third, I need x squared. Once I've figured out what goes in that blank, now I have to multiply. It's kind of like distributing this blank to x and to the -1. And those answers are written right down here. So x squared times x is x to the third. X squared times -1 is -1 x squared. And you know how you don't have to write the 1 in front of x squared? It might be really helpful for you to do that. Okay, then I subtract. X to the third minus x to the third is 0. You want that. If that doesn't happen, you did something wrong. Then remember we're subtracting 0x squared minus a -1x squared. And if that's difficult to do in your head, that's okay. Try in your calculator 0 minus -1. You should get +1x squared. Bring your next term down. And then you're ready for the next cycle. Now I'm trying to figure out what goes here. So this light blue blank times x needs to give me 1x squared. So it's going to be a +1. I've already got x. How do I get to x squared? You need another x. Now multiply 1x times x and 1x times -1 and write those answers below. So 1x times x is 1x squared. 1x times -1 is -1x. Do the subtraction. First one should always be 0. 0x minus -1x would be +1x. Bring the next term down and start your next cycle. Now we are looking for this blank. This light green blank times x has to give me 1x. You're always looking for the leftmost term at the bottom of your column. So x times what would give me 1x? 1. And then you distribute 1 times x and 1 times 1 and write those answers down here. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times -1 is -1. Do your subtraction. And again, we had no remainder. So our answer, the result of our division, is x squared plus 1x plus 1. This means if I took x minus 1 and multiplied it to that, I would get x cubed minus 1 as my answer.